Opposition protests rock Dominica while election observers visit the country ahead of Friday's polls. Colombians take to the streets for new national strike. And in Chile, social organizations present proposal toward new constitution. Hello and welcome to Telesur. I'm Doris Polo in Quito, and this is From the South. Election observers are currently in Dominica ahead of the country's December 6th poll. A three-member team from the Caribbean community, or CARICOM, will meet with electoral officials, leaders of political parties and other stakeholders. On election day, the mission will monitor the electoral process from the opening of the poll through the voting process, the closing of the poll and the counting of the ballots. Members of the regional security system are also visiting the island on a peacekeeping mission on the heels of fiery opposition protests calling for electoral reform. Meanwhile, the Organization of American States has sent a mission to the island. OAS officials met with the Prime Minister and Minister of Foreign Affairs, and the former Prime Minister of the Bahamas, Hubert Ingraham, signed the Agreement of Immunities and Privileges with Dominica's ambassador to the OAS.
Election day in Dominica will be December 6th. They can try what they want, they can do what they want. They can jump high, they can jump low. There will be elections in Dominica on December 6th, ladies and gentlemen. And we are going out. We are going out on election day and we are voting the Dominica Labour Party back in office.
Now, despite that court ruling, the leader of the opposition United Workers' Party, Lennox Linton, is threatening to resort to violence to prevent the vote. Our correspondent Alejandro Kirk reports from the capital, Rosso.
It is not a building, but a cruise ship, taller than any in Dominica. Its engines move the local economy, but political upheavals have broken the soft Caribbean harmony. The High Court of Justice has rejected an injunction to stop the upcoming elections.
So the court said no, the election will continue. Because under our law, and it's not only the law of Dominica, but the law of the Commonwealth, that says that once the president, as the head of state, issues the writ or the proclamation for the elections, then the elections must proceed. And if one wants to challenge it, then one has to challenge it, a person has to challenge it by a petition after the holding of the elections.
Supported by the leadership of the United States and the Organization of American States, the opposition denounces Dominica's Labourite government for electoral fraud, among many other accusations.
The accusations that Mr. Linton has been making, he has not provided a single shred of evidence of those accusations. In fact, the Prime Minister has sued him in the court in Dominica for those accusations. And the Minister for Foreign Affairs has also sued him in the courts.
Facing another legal defeat, opposition leader Lennox Linton foresees violence.
Ask those who want me to hypocritically tell people, okay, behave yourself, cool down, calm down. When their rights are being abridged, when their rights are being abused, where they are being trampled on by people who are no better than a bunch of hungry hyenas.
Labour Prime Minister, ranking ahead on polls, rejected an electoral freeze and decided to ease tensions.
This country is safe, and free and fair elections will go ahead on December 6th as scheduled. I repeat my call to Lennox Linton, Edison James and the UWP to bring an end to this lawlessness. I am calling on them to tell their supporters to stop. I am calling on Linton and the UWP to put Dominica first.
Sailing away, visitors don't have a clue of what's happening. But Dominica is fighting a struggle so much on social rights as for independence and sovereignty. Jesus Romero and Alejandro Kirk, Telesur Rosso.
Now, Alejandro Kirk was also in Layu earlier, where he had spoken to representatives or legal representatives of the government.
This is the town of...
Tell him go back to his country and show the world.
Well, we have some visitors here. Look at him. He's telling me to go back to my country, that I'm a fucking communist. This road was unblocked today by members of the Dominica Labour Party in negotiations with the police and the people from the United Workers' Party, who were actually they put all these old cars here to block the road in a move that was decided last night at a meeting in the town of Salisbury, in which they decided, the opposition, to block all roads in order to stop the elections to take place on Friday. So this is not the only block, but members of the Dominica Labour Party told us they are going to go everywhere and try and negotiate a settlement so that the roadblocks are stopped and the elections will take place. That's what they tell us, and it seems that this is a peaceful country. This violence does not look like something natural coming out of them. It's part, seemingly, of a plan to disrupt the elections.
Dominica is a peaceful country, but the election have them possessed like that.
Well,
Dominica is a peaceful country. Dominica is very peaceful. But you see them, the party against the government is them are doing all the problem now. Blocking the road.
This guy is very violent.
Yeah, them workers, them are doing the violence.
And why are they doing
blocking the road? Because they say they don't want election to call. They want electoral reform. For election to come. They're blocking road every year. Workers are doing that. Them blue are doing that. Blocking road and doing them shit there. In
everywhere.
Dominica. Every year. But Dominica is a very peaceful country. It's very peaceful. But you see that election there? You see that election that come there? First time I see that in my life. I'm 62 years since I live in. And first time I see that in election.
So why is this happening?
Because the opposition want to get in power, and it's seeing the government over.
So they don't want to win the elections, they want to get in power.
Yeah,
by force?
By force, it's just that. By force they want to get in power. United Workers' Party, blue, they want to get in power by force. Because they see Scary win the election already. We don't go to the poll yet, but they see that. So they want to make all the problem for the getting in power by force, but that won't work.
Okay, thank you.
All right, my brother.
Well, that's the situation in this small town of Layu, very close to Rosso, and so there are expectations that something worse can happen, but it doesn't look like these people want violence.
That was our correspondent Alejandro Kirk in the island of Dominica. Shifting gears now, hundreds of thousands of Colombians are marching to Bolivar Square after the main strike committee announced that talks with President Ivan Duque have stalled. The protesters are rejecting the government's neoliberal proposals, including massive privatization, and demand an end to the killing of environmental leaders, social activists, and former FARC members. They say they want a peaceful and just country. Demonstrators also reject a reform proposed by the government and currently that is being debated in Congress to increase retiring age and lower salaries for young people. Our correspondent Hernan Tobar has the latest from the ground in Bogota.
This Wednesday, Colombians will take part in a great national strike that was called by workers' unions, students, and other social sectors. This march is similar to the one that occurred on November 21st. Demonstrators are demanding that the government listens to their requests, but more so, withdraw reforms that negatively impact the poor, including proposed tax and labor policies. They also want dialogue to resume with the National Liberation Army, and above all, the implementation of the 2016 peace agreements. Meanwhile, indigenous people are demanding an end to the genocide of their group, and for their government to stop its war policy implemented across the country. Now, this march will see the mobilization of doctors, students, and workers from across the country to Bolivar Square. It follows dialogue that occurred between some members of the strike committee and government officials on Tuesday. There, they outlined their concerns and sought solutions, including an end to the persecution of protesters. They had also requested that the meeting be broadcast. The government spokesperson assured that these demands will be taken to the president. Let me remind you that the president had previously said he would speak with protesters if this Wednesday strike was cancelled, but the strike committee did not agree. Demonstrations will continue until December 20th. There will be a huge concert on Sunday, and on Thursday they will meet with government officials once again for dialogue to resume.
We'll take a short break now. When we come back, an update on local government elections in Trinidad and Tobago. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back. Social organizations in Chile are presenting a proposal to the Constituent Assembly that will draft a new constitution. The proposal was born out of the Summit of the People taking place in Santiago, parallel to the COP25 UN Climate Summit. Now, the agreement to begin a Constituent Assembly came after weeks of anti-government protests in Chile. The country's current constitution was passed in 1980 during the military dictatorship of Augusto Pinochet. And staying in Chile, workers' unions have met to discuss new protests against the economic and social model. Several meetings and debates will take place up until December 7th as part of the Summit of the People. The workers will also join social organizations in demanding swift action against climate change, and a large protest is scheduled for Friday. In other news, negotiations continue in Bolivia's Legislative Assembly to decide the candidates for the Supreme Electoral Court, which will organize new elections. Our correspondent Mateo Grille has the latest from La Paz.
Al día de hoy son 4 los postulantes para integrar el Tribunal Supremo Electoral.
So far, there are 4 candidates to sit on the Supreme Electoral Court of Bolivia, which must set the date for the next election in this country. This was an agreement reached in the Plurinational Assembly, and it establishes a series of requirements for finally constituting the main electoral authority to organize the next elections. In all, there are 7 members of the Supreme Electoral Court. One of them has already been appointed by the de facto president of the country, Yanín Áñez. So there are 6 members still to be elected from all the candidates. 3 of these must be women, and 2 must belong to the indigenous of peasant peoples. Next December 18 is the deadline to elect the candidates, and applications will be accepted up until the 7th of this month. Between December 7th and 18th, the candidates who apply will be scrutinized, and personal interviews will be conducted to decide on the members of this court. After the court is elected, it will have 120 days to hold the date of the next elections. There is not yet a date for the elections, but they will set that date after December 18th. The elections will be for the president, vice president, members of the lower house and senators. Remember that at the moment there is a de facto regime in Bolivia after Yanín Áñez proclaimed herself president of Bolivia after the constitutional president of the country, Evo Morales, was pressured by the armed forces to resign from the presidency, and as you know, later he had to accept the offer of asylum in Mexico made by the President Andrés Manuel López Obrador.
Some countries never tire of trying to interfere in Venezuela. Now they are using the long-forgotten Rio Treaty for reciprocal military assistance. But the Venezuelan people are having nothing of it.
The people once again filled the streets of Caracas to reassert Venezuela's sovereignty, while a group of foreign ministers met in Bogotá to further their plans to intervene in Venezuela. This time, they used the Rio Treaty of Reciprocal Assistance, but these people are resisting with music and conviction.
Let them come to Venezuela and see all these faces full of emotion, joy, humility, and honesty. This is Venezuela. It's not war, it's peace. We want peace because we are love, affection, and determination. Nobody can intervene in Venezuela because we are standing firm. If they want to come and give us a hug, like we do with our brother countries.
The Rio Treaty was signed in 1948. It aims to give help to countries that are attacked by others. Paradoxically, it is now being used to attack Venezuela again. And again, they are failing. Because Venezuela withdrew from the treaty in 2012 under Hugo Chavez, and its decision on Venezuela are null and void. It also has no effect. Because Venezuela has withdrawn from the OAS, the Venezuelan people, united with the military, no longer accept submission to the interests of the North.
We are marching to say, out with Trump, and to defend our Venezuela. We have to defend our country, which is the best thing we have.
One opposition member of the National Assembly proposed that Venezuela rejoin the Rio Treaty, another empty gesture, because the Assembly is still in breach of the Constitution, and its decision have validity only for the media. And if the Assembly does overcome its breach of the Constitution, it will have to send such proposals to President Nicolás Maduro for his approval.
They should look after their own countries. All countries should be free and independent, and respect each other's sovereignty. We just ask for respect. We don't interfere with anyone, and they shouldn't interfere with us.
At its final destination, the march was greeted by participants in the International Communication Congress, where journalists and others from over 40 countries are meeting to defend sovereignty and self-determination for all the peoples of the world.
The people are mobilizing today to reject the attempts by a group of countries who think they are the gendarmes of this continent and want to impose their views on Venezuela. Venezuela rejects the use of outdated, redundant institutions like the Rio Treaty. They are only using this because they failed at the OAS. The Lima Group has failed, and even the direct pressure of the United States against the people of Venezuela has failed.
Chile and Colombia, in the middle of popular uprising against their governments, are two of the countries trying to use the Rio Treaty to intervene in Venezuela. Maybe it is a smoke screen to conceal their problems at home.
Recounts have been carried out in 5 out of 14 electoral districts across Trinidad following the local government election on Monday. The Elections and Boundaries Commission confirmed that requests were made for recounts in Marabella West, Coquille, Valencia, West, Mayaro, Guayaguayari, Ozenville, Tunapuna, and 5 of the 13 polling stations in Laramine. The ruling People's National Movement, or PNM, has been confirmed the winner in 4 out of 5 of the districts. The United National Congress won Laramine with a difference of 457 votes. However, it is not yet clear if the result will remain the same. The Bolivarian Alliance for the Peoples of Our America, or ALBA, says it is concerned about attempts to interfere in the domestic affairs of Suriname. Venezuela's Foreign Minister Jorge Arreaza tweeted a communique in which ALBA condemns the manipulation of a legal process that is still in course to try to block President Desi Buthelezi from standing for re-election next year. Last Friday, a court convicted the president of murder, but he said that the charges were a political game and is appealing. ALBA criticized the governments of Germany, the Netherlands, the United States, and others for interfering in a matter which is the exclusive concern of the people and authorities of Suriname. Women's organizations are slamming the Ecuadorian government's failure to address the decriminalization of abortion in cases of rape in the Constitutional Court. They're also rejecting cutbacks towards the protection of women in the 2020 budget.
The National Assembly passed several reforms to the Organic Penal Code in September 2019. However, they neglected to explore the decriminalization of abortion. They subsequently repealed 3 articles and voted for a transitional provision, which women's groups say impedes their constitutional rights. One of which relates to abortion, and they're urging the Constitutional Court to address it. But the court says its hands are tied unless the Assembly approves these policies.
The court basically said this is not the right way to demand changes to our abortion laws. There hasn't been a declaration, but it said it will analyze the request to see how it affects the Constitution. This ultimately leaves an open door towards decriminalizing abortion in cases of rape.
Women's organizations also reject cutbacks in the 2020 budget, which completely ignores the need to create policies to treat violence against women.
It's 17 times cheaper to invest in sex education than it is to take care of unwanted pregnancies or deal with the consequences of an abortion. That's according to a joint study by the United Nations and Ministry of Health. So the government knows that this will save lives, but they've decided not to invest at all.
Although the authorities haven't responded to the concerns of women's groups, some of the government's lawmakers have their own personal interests towards solving Ecuador's social problems.
It's important to analyze the situation with common sense and outside of politics. While we have a regime that speaks to social equality and in women's defense, they propose the opposite in these reforms. They've given more to police and national security than to women and education.
Women's organizations say the teen pregnancy prevention bill remains unfunded, and the budget to treat with the prevention of violence against women has been reduced to 84%. All this in a country where every 72 hours a woman is violently murdered just because she is a woman.
And we'll take one last break, but we do have more stories coming up, so stay with us. Welcome back. In New Zealand, Maori community leaders have gathered in Wellington to deliver a petition to the Parliament against armed police patrols across the country. This follows heightened security concerns after a mass shooting in Christchurch that killed 51 people in March. The small group says they have 10,000 signatures, adding that they do not want the armed police patrol currently being debated turned into law. New Zealand, like the United Kingdom and Norway, is one of the few countries where police do not carry guns while on general duty. However, handguns, rifles and tasers are kept in their vehicles and can be used with a supervisor's permission.
If they talked to us, they would know we don't want this. They would know we don't need this. And then to tell us that this is based on overseas experiences. Over in Australia, the number of Aboriginal young people who've been killed by a police force because they're armed up. Why are we following in those footsteps? And why are they insulting us if they're doing it for our safety?
The Australian Parliament has voted to remove the right of doctors to order sick asylum seekers to be evacuated from migrant camps in Papua New Guinea and Nauru. The vote overturns a historic decision in February when opposition lawmakers defeated the government and gave doctors the right to bring sick refugees to the Australian mainland for treatment. Under Australia's controversial immigration policy, many refugees are detained for years in remote detention camps in the Pacific, and the government refuses to allow asylum seekers intercepted at sea to enter Australia.
Members of the Cabinet of Australia are coming in to vote on a deal that's been done with Senator Jackie Lambie that they don't even know about. What sort of cabinet government is that? What sort of process of democracy is that? Well, this is government, is it? We just walk in and put up our hands and walk across the chamber on a deal that not even the Cabinet has had a look at. What sort of government are you running?
Thank you.
Because this government, devoid of a heart, devoid of any human compassion, devoid of empathy, just wants to keep people locked up in indefinite cruel detention for years and years and years, using them as some kind of human warning signal, claiming that somehow this is integral to Operation Sovereign Borders. Let's be clear this. Medevac has nothing to do with Operation Sovereign Borders. Labour supports Operation Sovereign Borders. We believe you can be strong on border protection without going weak on humanity. This government goes weak on humanity at every possible turn.
And we leave you with an unusual rendition of the People United from Chile. It was part of a concert called Requiem for Chile in homage to the victims of police violence in the last 2 months. And that brings us to the end of this news brief. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. For our viewers in Africa, remember you can find us on Starsat Channel 461 in South Africa and Channel 539 in Nigeria. And join us on social media. For Telesur English, I'm Doris Polo. Thank you so much for watching.